decade, I've basically lived a single life. I don't remember the last time I got to a location where somebody checked in on me and it was like, hey.
Drama has exploded like wildfire in the Sister Wives universe, setting off shockwaves across the fandom as Meri Brown, the once legally bound wife of Kody Brown and long-reigning matriarch of the family, made a bold stand for self-expression that spiraled into a public showdown that no one saw coming, one that reignited long-standing wounds, brought unresolved betrayals back to the surface, and left fans reeling with questions about loyalty, boundaries, and personal growth. The chain of events began innocently enough. Meri posted a heartfelt, raw Instagram message, seemingly intended to show gratitude, share growth, and reflect on the complicated journey she's had within the polygamous Brown family structure. However, that post, candid, unfiltered, and courageous, didn't sit well with Kody Brown, the controversial patriarch, now more infamous for his emotional distance and divisive favoritism than for being a provider or spiritual guide. According to reports from Parade and multiple social media outlets, Kody allegedly demanded Meri take down the post, citing its tone and implication as damaging to the family's image. But instead of yielding, Meri clapped back with fiery defiance, refusing to shrink herself again. Her refusal to be silenced marked a milestone moment for fans who have watched her for over a decade, often playing the role of the silent sufferer, the sidelined wife who once desperately sought validation from a man who had long since emotionally abandoned her. Her response resonated deeply and immediately went viral, an unapologetic rejection of the system that had once defined her. A stand that echoed the sentiments of many women who felt overlooked, underestimated, or dismissed. The post didn't just rattle Kody, reignited memories of the Coyote Pass property dispute, where Kody callously told Meri she didn't deserve an equal share of the land because she only has one child, minimizing her decades of devotion and sacrifice in a single cruel sentence that has haunted fans ever since. But Meri isn't that silent, yearning woman anymore. The internet rallied to her defense, with fans flooding her post with messages of support, celebrating this bold, confident Meri who had finally found her voice and wasn't afraid to use it, even if it meant burning bridges that should have been torched long ago. And while some questioned whether Meri was still protecting Robyn Brown, Kody's favored wife, and arguably the catalyst of much of the family's downfall, others saw her reaction as layered, emotional, and complex, because Meri, for all the hurt she's endured, has always carried the weight of loyalty too heavily on her shoulders. From the outside, Meri's dynamic with Robyn has long confused fans. After all, Robyn was the wedge that split the family's fragile equilibrium back in 2010, when she entered their lives as the fourth wife, and the only one to legally marry Kody. Meri, who initially supported bringing Robyn into the fold, was the very one who volunteered to divorce Kody legally, enabling him to marry Robyn so he could adopt her children. That move, presented on the show as a noble sacrifice, marked the beginning of Meri's descent into loneliness and emotional neglect. Yet even after that sacrifice, Kody never circled back to care for Meri. Instead, his affection centered more and more on Robyn, whose reserved, polished demeanor seemed to enthrall him. As the seasons unfolded, it became painfully obvious that Meri's place in Kody's heart had been vacated. And while Christine and Janelle ultimately walked away from their spiritual marriages with him, it took Meri longer to untangle herself from the emotional manipulation. But the recent viral moment wasn't the only thing stirring old wounds. In an emotional interview on Let's Be Honest with Lee, Meri revealed that her sense of self had always felt out of place among the other wives. She reflected on early judgments from Christine and Janelle about her appearance, sharing that they had told her not to wear makeup or do her hair, implying that physical presentation was somehow incompatible with the moral tone of their lifestyle. That pressure to conform left her feeling uncomfortable and ashamed, especially when unexpected guests once saw her without Makeup a moment that left her humiliated and questioning the entire dynamic. "I'm like, fine, Janelle and Christine. You are, Jax. We'll never do this again," she concluded, reclaiming her autonomy in that powerful memory. And ironically, it's the very thing Meri was once criticized for makeup, became the symbol of favoritism when Robyn did the exact same thing during family camping trips, complete with Kody's admiration. Christine once shared that during those trips, while she and the others worked hard to set up, cook, and clean, Kody would lavish Robyn with compliments for simply looking presentable, praising her for wearing makeup while others labored, turning a moment of collective effort into another act of favoritism. Janelle echoed similar frustrations, revealing how her son, Hunter Brown, was visibly upset by the delays caused by Robyn's long beauty routine during camping trips. Meri, in the interview, tried to rationalize these moments, saying that everyone had their own interests, Christine with cooking, Janelle with camping, and she and Robyn with makeup and self-care. But this reflection sparked debates among fans about whether Meri was still trying to defend Robyn, even after everything that happened. Some YouTube users called out Meri's inconsistency, arguing she seemed to forget the lies, the manipulation, and the emotional cruelty that she herself had experienced at the hands of both Kody and Robyn. But others saw Meri as a deeply human figure, flawed, searching, still navigating the painful terrain of selfhood after decades of emotional imprisonment in a system that diminished her. Meanwhile, Janelle Brown, who married Kody in 1993, has carved out her own powerful narrative of resilience, heartbreak, and rebirth, following her divorce in 2022. Janelle shifted her focus inward, choosing healing, farming, and motherhood over the chaos of her past. She channeled her pain into purpose even as tragedy struck when her beloved son, Garrison Brown, died in March 2024. The loss shook her to the core and revealed the stark emotional chasm between her and Kody. In Sister Wives Season 19, Janelle's grief was palpable, and her anger justified. She confronted Kody directly about the unequal treatment and betrayal she had endured, even contemplating legal action alongside Meri over the infamous Coyote Pass situation. It was a season of reckoning, where Janelle no longer held back her feelings or tried to keep the peace. During the season's tell-all with Suki Krishnan, she unapologetically declared, "I just don't like them." When asked about her current relationship with Cody and Robyn, Moment fans cheered for a cross. Social media, finally witnessing a woman who had always been calm, measured, and forgiving, finally lay bare her truth. Suki pressed further, asking if there was any other reason she didn't want to socialize with them, to which Janelle responded with brutal honesty, "I don't like them in that setting." It wasn't petty, it wasn't performative. Was Liberation.now in 2025. Janelle is thriving in North Carolina, surrounded by real love and authentic connection. She has built a new life near her daughter Madison Brush. And together with Madison and her son-in-law Caleb, she co-founded TID Farms, a new agricultural venture that has given her purpose and joy. Janelle regularly shares glimpses of this fulfilling new chapter on social media. Birthday trips with friends who make her laugh, milestones with her grandchildren, and honest reflections about the path she's walked to get here. Her caption, "When you have friends who show up to a birthday trip ready to bring the laughs," wasn't just a lighthearted post-it, was a declaration of freedom from the emotional baggage she once carried. And even as she continues to mourn Garrison, her tribute to him lives in every moment. She now chooses herself, no longer silencing her truth for the sake of keeping a broken family intact. While Meri's recent viral moment may be stirring headlines, now it's part of a much bigger tapestry that fans have watched unfold for over a decade. A story about women who were taught to share a man, to suppress themselves, to endure in silence, and who are now, one by one, rejecting that narrative and writing their own. Whether Meri continues to protect pieces of the past or fully steps into her power remains to be seen. But for now, her voice, fierce, unfiltered, and frees, echoing far louder than Kody's ever could. And fans are listening, are listening.
Thing you're telling us to, but they weren't. And they're blaming me for the choices that they had. They were not culpable. That is not gaslighting. That is...
And while the world was fixated on Meri Brown's fiery resurgence and Kody's public unraveling, another powerful journey was unfolding quietly, but meaningfully in the heart of North Carolina, where Janelle Brown, long known for her steady demeanor and pragmatic spirit, was redefining what healing looks like in the aftermath of betrayal, grief, and long-suppressed identity. Unlike Meri, who once seemed to vacillate between defiance and loyalty, Janelle has taken a more rooted, grounded path, finding strength in simplicity, healing in nature, and peace in authenticity. In April 2025, during a brief trip to Flagstaff for personal matters, Janelle took time to reunite with her old friends Christina and Angela, women who had stood beside her during countless seasons of emotional turbulence. Capturing their reunion in photos that radiated pure joy, Janelle posted a heartfelt message reflecting on the power of female friendship. Writing, "Contemplating tonight how amazing it is to have friends, and recalling how these women were once simply co-workers and confidants who became anchors during times she juggled full-time motherhood and work within a high-pressure, highly scrutinized polygamous household. Those once casual connections have now matured into some of the deepest, most cherished relationships in her life, pouring her laughter, lightness, and love without expectations." She recounted silly games, delicious meals, and a level of relaxation that contrasted sharply with the tension she once lived under with Cody and Robyn. Janelle has come to value these genuine bonds more than any past attempts to fix what was broken in her old life, and in recent months, she has made it a point to spend time only with people who fill her cup rather than drain it. In photos posted by her friend April Rains, Janelle looked radiant and at ease, confident, free, and completely herself, no longer tolerating toxicity or pretending for the sake of public image. Her decision to emotionally detox from Cody and Robyn wasn't rooted in spite, but in self-preservation. After nearly 30 years of navigating a polygamous marriage that increasingly marginalized her voice and visibility, she realized that she owed herself more. She severed ties not in bitterness, but in pursuit of peace, fully aware that Cody no longer saw her as a partner, let alone as someone deserving of affection or respect. She watched as he withdrew, not just from her, but from his paternal responsibilities, his love becoming transactional, his promises thin and forgettable. Even before the final emotional split in 2022, Janelle had begun sensing that something inside her was changing. The COVID-19 pandemic accelerated this awareness, revealing to her how emotionally unavailable Cody had become. No longer content with crumbs, she chose to walk away and never look back. She relocated to North Carolina, where she transformed heartbreak into a new beginning by acquiring a farm and building a business alongside her daughter, Madison, and son-in-law Caleb, a place called Tid Farms, where seeds of growth were planted, not only in the soil but in her spirit. It was here that Janelle rediscovered herself outside the identity of wife of Kody Brown. But the past wouldn't let her go easily. With unresolved financial issues hanging over her head, particularly the Coyote Pass property she had invested in, Janelle confronted Cody for what was rightfully hers. She even considered legal action, pushing back on the very man who had once called her his rock, yet offered her nothing but emotional absence and empty promises. By early 2025, Cody finally sold the property and paid Janelle her fair share, a symbolic closure to a chapter that had taken too much from her for far too long. Yet, just as she was beginning to reclaim stability, Janelle's path was shaken by the most unimaginable loss: the death of her beloved son, Garrison Brown, in March 2024. The grief was paralyzing, the pain impossible to articulate. Season 19 of Sister Wives captured Janelle in a raw, unguarded state, processing the loss. standing in confrontation with Kody, and holding nothing back about how much he had failed their family. Despite all this, the world had the audacity to question her sexuality. Rumors began swirling online, accusing Janelle of being asexual or uninterested in physical intimacies, simply because she hadn't jumped into dating like Christine had after her divorce. During the season 19 tell-all, Janelle finally broke her silence with both humor and frustration. "I promise you, I'm not asexual. I promise you," she stated firmly. "I'm a very sexual being, a very earth mama," she added, clarifying that just because she didn't enjoy what she called assembly line kisses with Kody doesn't mean she's not interested in connection. She simply hasn't had time to date, not when she's been focused on healing, rebuilding, and grieving. Fans applauded her courage in shutting down the baseless speculation. Recognizing that women are so often defined by their proximity to men, Janelle is redefining that narrative. Unlike Christine, who found immediate solace in David Woolley and celebrated her new marriage in 2023 with joy and pride, Janelle has chosen solitude, self-reflection, and inner peace. That doesn't mean she's closed to love, it means she refuses to rush into it just to appease social expectations. And that restraint, that deliberate focus on self, has only deepened fans' admiration for her. Janelle's transformation since her divorce is nothing short of remarkable. She's shed the emotional clutter, detoxed her environment, and filled it with meaningful work, soulful friendships, and real conversations. No longer interested in keeping up appearances or pretending to like people she doesn't, she's fully aligned with her truth. She's no longer answering to a husband who withheld love, nor to critics who question her choices. She's answering only to herself, her family, and the earth she now tills with pride.
You know, I don't think any of us thought this would go as long as it has.
Oh no.
And it's changed our culture, and maybe permanently.
I've actually been going through...
And while Christine was basking in the glow of her new love with David, Woolley and Meri was finally finding her voice in a world that had silenced her for far too long. It was Janelle Brown, once the calm, reliable pillar of the Brown family, who was undergoing perhaps the most complex, emotionally layered transformation of all, with over 30 years tethered to a man whose idea of leadership often felt more like control. Janelle's evolution didn't come with fireworks or quick romance, but with quiet strength, pain-stained clarity, and an intentional rebuilding of her life piece by piece. Unlike Christine, who confidently re-entered the dating world and celebrated a whirlwind romance that led to marriage. And unlike Meri, whose journey was often marked by longing and betrayal, Janelle walked a different road, one rooted in independence, careful reflection, and finally putting her own peace above all else. And while fans eagerly speculated about whether she would follow Christine's path into a new romantic chapter, Janelle made it abundantly clear she doesn't owe anyone a rebound relationship to prove her worth or sexuality. She's not performing, healing for the cameras or the critics. She's living it authentically, messily, and with quiet grace. Janelle has faced more post-separation hurdles than any of the other sister wives. Financial strain, grief, family division, internet speculation, and a personal sense of betrayal that can't be overstated. After severing her spiritual bond with Kody in 2022, she relocated to North Carolina, poured her energy into her new agricultural business, seed farms, and began focusing on healing not just from the toxic patterns of polygamy, but from the emotional chaos that had come to define her adult life. And yet, the public eye didn't offer her a moment of reprieve. Instead, critics turned their attention to her romantic life, or lack thereof, spinning narratives about her sexuality, her desirability, and her refusal to immediately seek new love. During the Sister Wives Season 19 tell-all, Janelle finally addressed these rumors head-on, clearly tired of the noise and the nonsense. "I promise you I'm not asexual," she declared, her voice both firm and weary. "I'm a very sexual being, a very earthed mama." Her words were more than a soundbite. They were a boundary, a reclaiming. She reminded everyone that she had just suffered the unimaginable loss of her son, Garrison Brown. That she was still grieving, still healing, and that intimacy was not a checkbox to be ticked for public approval. She wasn't interested in assembly line kisses or playing relationship catch-up with her ex-sister wives. Janelle needed time. And more than that, she had earned the right to take it. And while the internet debated her dating status, Janelle was reconnecting with old friends, nurturing bonds that had survived decades of chaos, and actively choosing joy over drama. In April 2025, she made a trip to Flagstaff, Arizona for personal matters, and turned it into an opportunity to reunite with longtime friends Christina and Angela, women who had known her long before the spotlight. She shared glowing photos on social media, paired with a moving caption, contemplating tonight how amazing it is to have friends. She reflected on how these friendships had started during her days balancing a full-time job and raising children. How her colleagues had evolved into her chosen family. She laughed, she reminisced, and she let go of decades of guilt for prioritizing herself. The games were silly, the food was incredible, and the joy was real. This wasn't the Janelle we once saw silently enduring Kody's microaggressions or shrinking herself in group meetings. This was a woman who had reclaimed her light and who had no plans of letting anyone dim it again. But fans weren't the only ones failing to understand her journey. Kody himself remained as oblivious and emotionally stunted as ever. His refusal to take responsibility for the collapse of his family, his obsession with control, his blind loyalty to Robyn, and his chronic favoritism remains one of the most tragic threads in the Brown family's saga. While Robyn and Kody painted their marriage as a love story for the ages, their behavior in the season 19 tell-alls revealed a very different picture. Defensive, evasive, and emotionally unavailable. They dodged tough questions from host Suki, Krishnan, and refused to own the damage they caused, while fans tuned in hoping for some honesty or accountability. What they got was a PR dance from a couple too stubborn nor too guilty to speak their truth. Kody's attempt to reconcile with Janelle during the tell-all was laughable, if not heartbreaking. When he asked her if there was any hope of rekindling their relationship, Janelle's response was both poetic and crushing. "We don't even exist in the same universe anymore." She had grown, evolved, outpaced him in every emotional metric, and he, clinging to delusion, couldn't grasp it. When she brought up the real, raw issues about Robyn, issues that every fan could see plain as day, Kody cut her off. "Don't go down that road," he warned, his voice taut with defensiveness. "I can't talk freely," Janelle replied. "Then let's just leave it as I don't really want to." That moment, that line, encapsulated the very reason every one of Kody's marriages fell apart, because conversations that threatened Robyn's pedestal were always shut down. She was the sacred cow, the untouchable wife. And no truth that risked tarnishing her image was allowed in the room. Even Robyn, in all her carefully rehearsed sympathy, refused to engage with the truth. When Suki asked her why she wouldn't, watch older clips from the show, clips that showed Janelle struggling to be heard, trying to express the impossible frustration of living under a dictatorship disguised as plural marriage. Robyn shrugged it off. "They're disturbing," she said, her lips curved into a smile that didn't match her words. She wouldn't watch them, she said, because they were destructive. But what's more destructive than pretending the past didn't happen? What's more damaging than denying the reality that her presence in Kody's life came with a systematic erasure of his other wives? Even when asked whether she thought Kody had failed his marriages, Robyn refused to be direct. "It takes two to break a relationship," she said, painting everyone with the same brush to avoid criticizing the man who, by all accounts, chose her and her children over his original family again and again. Her performative neutrality didn't fool anyone, and it certainly didn't fool Janelle, who by that point had stopped expecting honesty from either of them. The favoritism was no longer a secret. It was a cornerstone of the Brown family collapse, as if Kody's gaslighting and deflections weren't enough. He had the audacity to wax poetic about Robyn in front of the entire world, describing her as his perfect match, the only one, who made him feel safe. Never mind that he already had 3 wives. Never mind that Christine, Janelle, and Meri had poured decades of loyalty, labor, and love into building his family. With each declaration of love for Robyn, he reminded the others that they were never enough. He did it without remorse. In an especially stomach-turning moment, Kody spoke about the electricity he felt the first time he met Robyn, as if the depth of his other marriages didn't deserve dignity or memory. He tried to elevate Robyn so high that it justified everything else: the neglect, the manipulation, the collapse. But all it did was reinforce what Janelle, Christine, and Meri had been saying for years, that in the end, there was only one wife Kody ever truly wanted. Still, Janelle isn't bitter. She's focused. She's building something real, something lasting. She lives near her daughter Madison, cherishes time with her grandchildren, and pours herself into her farm. She still grieves Garrison. There's no timeline for that kind of pain, but she does it with a strength that silences every critic who once questioned her softness. And while the world speculates about her love life, Janelle has been finding love in friendship, in freedom, in the earth beneath her feet. She's taken walks with her grandchildren, played games with her lifelong friends, celebrated birthdays, and posted tributes that show a woman completely in tune with her worth. She may not have a David Woolley, but she has herself, and maybe that's more than enough for now. Fans can hope for a new partner. They can ship her with fictional suitors. But Janelle doesn't need a man to validate her femininity, her sexuality, or her strength. She's finally living life on her terms, free of emotional debt and patriarchal pressure. If Sister Wives ends with season 19, so be it. Janelle's story doesn't need another season to be complete. Her healing is the legacy. Her freedom is the arc. Her silence in the face of pressure isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And for the first time in decades, she's exactly where she's supposed to be.